All right, everybody, what is going on? Good afternoon. Got a little bit more Seattle Seahawks stuff to talk about here outside the bounds of training camp. So thought I'd go ahead and make a separate video here because this doesn't really have anything to do with what is happening on the field at the VMAC. We're going to do some contract stuff, talk about some of these contract notes regarding one contract that we hope to have on the books soon, and another that is already on the books in the last couple of weeks. This video is sponsored by Prize Picks. More on them a little bit later. But we got this yesterday, and this was definitely welcome in my book because I view this as being one of the things that the Seahawks really need to do between now and kickoff. I don't think it would be a good idea to push this off any more than is absolutely necessary. So it's one thing for us as fans to talk about it, but it's another thing to hear from the team or sources close to the team that it's going to happen. So we got this from Steve Weich. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he talked a little bit about Devon Witherspoon and the contract situation with him. And this does somewhat echo the sentiments we got a few weeks ago about Witherspoon's extension. It sounds relatively inevitable, but we're not there yet. So according to him, the Seahawks and Devon Witherspoon are working to get a contract extension completed before training camp, but there is work to be done. So this seems to be the team's top priority, the way that we're hearing quite a bit about how this is what they're doing, this is what they're attempting. So this seems like something that is inevitable. I'm sure that they are prepared to make him the highest paid corner in the league. I'm sure that is their expectation, and he deserves it. I don't think there's any doubt that he deserves to get more than Trent McDuffie did. I don't think there's any doubt that he deserves to get more than any other cornerback currently on the books did, even if he isn't quite as good as some of those other corners, which is debatable. Maybe he's not as good as Pat Surtain. Maybe he's not as good as somebody like a Sauce Gardner. That's debatable. It's his turn. And when it's your turn, you get paid at the top if you are among the top. So I got no issues with the money that Witherspoon is likely to get. I just want him to get it before it gets even worse later. So sounds like they're still negotiating. Now, what they're negotiating about, we don't know. Maybe they're far apart in money. Maybe it's just a matter of one side wants 4 years, the other side wants 3 years. Maybe it's a matter of guarantees or signing bonus. But I think we all have a pretty firm understanding of where this will ultimately land in a general sense. So I think it gets done. All right, so that's number one. Just wanted to say that this isn't just something that we as fans are floating out there. This is something that the team is clearly working towards. Second thing I want to talk about concerns Derrick Hall. We've gotten some updates about his contract and his incentives. I don't want to make a whole new video about it because it's not huge or anything like that. But one thing that was said about the deal at the time was that there was $4.5 million in incentives. And now we know what those $4.5 million in incentives are. They are going to be difficult to reach. He's going to have to do something that he's going to have to do something that he's never done before. And if he does it, I don't think anybody's going to be unhappy about it, because if he does that, he will have ascended to the point where he is well outstripping the value of the deal. So let's take a look at some of the math here. It's relatively simple, actually. If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the Prize Picks app, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball. We got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like. Prize Picks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. So there is $1.5 million in incentives for Hall potentially in 27, 28, and 29. So each of those seasons has 1.5 million for a total of 4.5 million. Hall would receive the largest of these amounts based on his sack production in the given season. So remember, it's staggered. So 26, 20, 28, 29. If he gets 10 or 11 sacks, it's 500,000. If it's 12 or more, he gets 1 million. If he gets 14 or more, he gets 1.5 million. So that's pretty great. That's pretty easy, right? Like if he becomes a double-digit sack a year guy, I think we're all going to be pretty thrilled with that, and paying him a little bit extra money is going to be well worth it, unless he becomes one of those guys that chases sacks at the expense of the defense, which does sometimes happen with a guy like maybe Jason Babin. The thing is, though, Mike McDonald probably wouldn't allow that. If Derrick Hall became a guy who just hunts for sacks and doesn't really care about team defense, you'd probably have a situation where he would get benched because McDonald doesn't put up with that. But yeah, even if he gets to 10 sacks, 500,000, which is nothing in the grand scheme of the salary cap, I mean, that's that is well worth it, because that is way more than he had last year and would be indicative of him becoming probably one of the 20 best edges in the league, especially if he can push it up to like 14. At that point, you might be in the top 10. I don't know. It depends on what else he's doing, but I don't think anybody has a problem with that incentive structure. One more thing before we get out of here, just to give ourselves a little bit more to talk about. We got one more contract thing yesterday. Not a Seahawks thing, but it is kind of relevant to our interests. Myles Garrett got a new updated contract with the Rams, and they are pushing the envelope here, people. The Rams are pushing it, and they are doing they're doing what the Eagles do best, but they're doing it maybe more than the Eagles have ever done with this contract. So the contract is 5 years, $208 million. So in the realm of what he was getting from the Browns anyway, that didn't radically change. However, if you take a look at the structure of the deal, things have gone kind of crazy here. And it's a little bit complicated. I'm going to try to explain it the best that I can, but I will admit to being a little bit confused by the layout here myself. So, one thing that hasn't changed, and this is the thing that I kind of came back to when I was looking at this deal, because a lot of people had it in their mind that Garrett was going to cost them so much money that it would screw up their roster after this season. That still isn't really the case in my book. The cap hit this year for the Rams is going to be about $8.5 million. Next year, 2027, 15. The year after that, about 27.5. These are manageable cap hits, especially the next 2 years, but even that third year is fine. I don't see this being some crippling thing. They can survive these cap hits for the time being. Now, once you get to 2029, 2030, yeah, we got 40 million, and then we got 48 million. That's crushing. And then you've got the void years. And let me try to talk through this the best that I can, but I'll admit to being a little bit confused about how this works myself. My understanding is that on top of the 4 void years listed here, for every year over the next 4 that Myles Garrett actually plays for the Rams, there's another void year that gets added to the end of the deal, I think. So that's why you have these 2035 to 2038 years being vested. My understanding is that with each year that passes, where Garrett plays, like 2027, that adds another void year, 2028, that adds another void year, and he's overwhelmingly likely to play at least those years. So that would add another 2 void years on. And then 2029, yeah, he's going to cost a lot, but he's going to cost almost as much if he's a dead cap hit, because that's still 32.4 million versus about 40 million over here. So he's probably still going to be there. And then 2030, then you have options, but you're probably looking at, in effect, if I'm right about the way the vested years work, 7 void years. And apparently the Rams are likely to do some restructuring later down the line with this contract to push more money down the line. So this is going to get pretty hideous by the time you hit the end of the decade. Now, is it still worth it? I mean, it's Myles Garrett, and you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now, and you're making it pretty clear you're not too worried about the future. But, I mean, if you look at this, this is the far off future. Yes, we're going to get to 2031, and the Rams are going to be eating 17.5 million on a player that either won't be there anymore or will be there on a different deal outside of this 17.5 million. And then 11.5, that's still pretty extreme. 7.5, okay, 2033, if it's still 7.5, that's not too bad. That's not the end of the world. The cap is going to be bloated by then. And then 3.3, I think the Rams assume, and they're correct, that that won't even be 1% of the cap by that point. And then we'll see what the vested years end up doing. We don't know exactly how those are going to factor in. Gonna just have to wait and see, I think, because I don't think we're going to be privy to that until the Rams actually mess around with the deal later. But is it worth it? For this team, I think the answer is probably yes. That doesn't mean it's not going to hurt later, but look how long it's going to take for it to hurt. This is not something the Seahawks can necessarily plan for because it's so far off in the future that you can't know what you're going to be in 5 years. So this, again, I want to stress, this is not a one and done Garrett thing. This is not, we're all in for this year, and after this year, we're screwed. This is a 3-year window with Garrett. They're hoping for a 2-year window with Stafford. And maybe after that, they can pivot to a new quarterback. We'll see. But, I mean, they are pushing it down the line, and they're pushing it in a way that has never really been done in the NFL history, as far as I know. Like, this is pretty extreme. And there will be pain later, but for a few years here, they're fine. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Just wanted to do some contract work here. See you soon.